friends, welcome to my channel. My name is Brianne Steffi with Steffi Stitch, and today I'm finally going to be sharing how I made my granny square dress. Here I will post some pictures of it on because it goes to the floor and there is a side slit that you can't see here, but I posted a short about this dress a while ago and I've had some comments asking how I did it, if I have a pattern. I don't have a pattern, but in this video I will share how I made all my granny squares, my granny triangles, how I pieced them all together, and how I did the edging and the straps. I'm not going to be making another dress just because I've already got one here. It takes a very long time, but I will show you all the different elements that it took to get to this. So if you're interested in learning how to do this or just how to do some granny squares, granny triangles, make sure to keep watching. And if you like videos like this and want to see more, make sure to like and subscribe, comment, all the things. But let's get started with the details. So let's pull her closer here. This is my dress form. My boys got it for me for Mother's Day, and her name's Bernice. Everyone was saying like, oh, like a sweet name like Betsy or something, but she's kind of always in the way. So her name's Bernice. Anyways, this is 100% cotton yarn that I used. I got it from Michael's. I made sure to get it while it was on sale. And I'll post a picture right here of the exact one that I used. It's really nice. It's soft. It doesn't peel or get frayed up or anything like that. By the way, I am 5'2". I'm short. This goes down to the floor. I bought 8 of each color, 8 white, 8 black, and I did have some left over. So I don't have a lot of advice on how many of each color to get, but just know that I started out with 16 and I think I probably had 2, what do you call them, reams? What do you call the things of yarn? You know what I'm talking about. I think I had 2 of each color left. But I will walk you through what I did for this. Here is a full view. Excuse all the mess. I'm in the middle of a bunch of different projects. But here's a full view of the dress. And I'm just going to talk you through how I assembled this because, like I said before, everybody's going to be different. This is going to fit differently for everyone. You're going to need more or less triangles depending on a bunch of different factors. So I'm going to just tell you how I assembled this, and hopefully it makes sense. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to explain how I did it. So first of all, I made a big panel and I flipped it so that the corners were pointing up of the squares. So that way I got a nice V and I had the shape, the diamond shapes that I wanted. So after I had a panel that I thought was wide enough to wrap around my whole body, because I just made a tube and I joined them together to make a tube. You can kind of see it's just all one big tube, and I did my chest area about to right here is where I started. Scoot back, Bernice. From there, I figured out a few different things. I figured out my straps, and to do this, I got a piece of ribbon and I tied it to the corners here and to the back corner, and I tried it on just to see how long I needed those straps to be. So I did that, and I took that measurement and just saved it for when I was ready to do my chain stitches. But I did not do my actual chain stitches until I had all of this done, because this is heavy and it is going to weigh the dress down quite a bit once it's all done. So then I figured out where I wanted my side slit to be, and right here is where it starts. You can go up way higher or lower, or just do none at all if you prefer that. But to do the slit, I got my tube and then I started joining them this way and then this way, but not connecting the tube, if that makes sense. So there were missing some pieces right here. It was kind of zigzag. I didn't add the triangles until the end. I got it however long I wanted there. And then from there, I added my granny triangles and joined them the same way I did my squares. And then I figured out the straps. So I got my chain stitches. I just did one row of chain stitches. It's black so you can't really see. And then I tried it on to make sure it didn't stretch too much, because those chain stitchings will stretch with the weight of this dress. And then from there, I got all of my borders done. After I added my triangles, I got all of the borders done, and the borders are just a single crochet. Let's see if I can make it redder so you can kind of see more of the details. These are just a single crochet, and I just hooked onto any loop I could find. And right here I added onto my chain stitch, so I just went up that way, I went around, and then I did that part, and then I went up this side. So I had that little loop, single crochet, chain stitch, single crochet along the back neckline, chain stitch, and then I did this here the same way. So there's 3 chain stitches to make this strap, and then I just did the single crochets around all the other borders. I added a triangle right there too, because if I didn't add that, it was way too wide. It needed to be brought in. And then for the border of the slit on the side, I did single crochets. And let me try to show you. For the granny triangles, it's not a nice chain stitch looking on the edges, because you have those double crochets and it's just the edges. There we go. So I just hooked onto whatever loop I could find. It's not super clean looking, but I just tried my best to make it nice and dense and to make a nice border, and I just went all the way around. So that is how I got to this final outcome. I know it's a little bit confusing, but I think if you have the basic skills to make all of your granny squares, your granny triangles, and then all you have to do is figure out your borders to kind of finish it, do the chain stitching for the straps, and you're good to go. You can make it to fit your body, and with me, I wear this with a belt to kind of cinch it in a little bit, but you could also make your tube, and then you can sew it together to kind of cinch it in at the waist. So I hope this was helpful, and yeah, let's get into the granny squares. Okay, so I managed to find the yarn that I actually used. It was in with my pumpkin stuffing, so it's a little bit fuzzy, but this is the actual yarn that I used. The size is a 3, and it calls for a 3.75 hook, but I used a 3.25 hook and it worked just great. So I already have some of them done for these granny squares. I used 4 rows, and then the 5th row was the border, and I will show you how I made these granny squares. I like my granny squares because they are really nice and dense, and I like how full they are. I tried a couple different patterns, and some of them called for some chain stitching between the shells, and I just thought it looked a little bit too bare, and I call these my gaps. The gaps were just too big, so I ended up with this one. I don't know if I mentioned this already, but I got the pattern from the Secret Yarnery, and I love it. I'll never do a granny square any other way. So let's start with white so that you can actually see what I'm doing. I know everybody starts differently. They have their own ways of doing knots. This is how I do mine. I loop it around twice. I take the innermost piece of yarn and I loop it over the outer one closest to, is this considered the eye of the hook? You'll have to excuse my terminology. I'm not very good with words. And then I do a chain stitch and lock that into place, and I consider that my knot. And I'm going to chain 3 and then I'm going to put my hook in that knot. That's why I don't like to tighten it too much. And then I'm going to do a slip stitch. And then with my ring finger and my thumb, I'm going to hold open the center of that loop we just made, and I'm going to start my first row by chaining 3, and then I'm going to start doing my double crochets. And for this first row, we're gonna do sets of 3. So for this first one, you chained the 3, and then you're gonna do 2 double crochets. But for the rest, it's gonna be 3 double crochets. So that's our side. I consider that my side. Now I'm gonna work on my corner, which is 2 chains. And now I'm gonna work on another side, which is 3 double crochets. Work on another corner, chain 2, another side. So you'll have 4 sides, 4 corners. And I'm trying to loop my tail in around that loop so that the double crochets catch it and lock it into place. Chain 2 for my corner. Work on my last side here. Three double crochets, and then to join this I'm going to chain 2, 1, 2, and I'm not super picky on this corner. I know you're probably supposed to count up 3, but I just stick my hook into whatever looks good, and I make sure that I have 2 pieces of yarn. I hope this is focused. 2 pieces of yarn on my hook there, and I'm going to do a slip stitch, and now we can start now we can start our second row. So to start, we're going to flip our work, tighten it up a little, and again chain 3 and double crochet 2. And we're expanding on this corner. I like to refer to these holes here as my gaps. So you'll hear me talk about putting it in the gap. So these are our corners, our corner gaps. So to expand on the corner, we're going to do that set of 3. We're going to chain 2. We always chain 2 in our corners, and then we're going to do 3 double crochets right into that corner gap. So for our second row, we're gonna really only be doing the corners because there are no side gaps, there's just corner gaps. And the thing here that I find is really helpful to make these really nice and dense and full is to not chain in between the sides, only chain the corner. So right here, I'm just gonna loop it and go right into that other corner gap and do my corner just like the other one. 3 double crochets, chain 2, another 3 double crochets, and then directly into that other corner gap. And every time you do a row, you will gain a side gap after this, and I'll show you the next row. And you'll just do your 3 double crochets in every gap and only chain 2 in those corners. So I'm going to finish this row, and I will show you how to work on the next row, and then from there you just expand upon the rows as much as you want, however big you want to make your granny squares. For my dress, I'm not sure if I already mentioned this, but for my dress I did 4 rows of the center color, and then I used 1 different color to do the border, and also the border is what I use to join all my granny squares together, which I will show you as well. So I'm going to finish this up and I will show you an example of that side gap I was talking about. So I just finished my last corner, and this is a side, this isn't a corner, so I'm just gonna finish that there, and I'm gonna go right in and join it together, doing a slip stitch, flip my work, and now you can see I have my corner gaps and then I have a side gap. So you will just do the same thing. You'll do your 3 double crochets right there, making sure not to chain in between them, only chain at your corners. So I'll do 1 corner here just to show you, and the rest of the rows will pretty much just be exactly the same. It'll just have more gaps to fill in. So double crochet 2 directly into that other corner. Whoopsie. I like this yarn a lot because it's kind of shiny and silky and it's really smooth. It feels amazing and it doesn't fuzz up at all. It is a little bit slippery though. Okay, so this is a corner, so I'm going to chain 2 and do my double crochets right into that corner again. 3, and then directly into that side gap. All right, so I'm going to finish this next 2 rows because I have 4 rows for my middle color, and then I will show you how I join them. I just did my last row for this center color, and you can see every time you do a row it adds gaps, and I just did my 3 double crochets, no chains in the middle. Now I'm just going into whatever corner feels right, and then I'm going to do a slip stitch and then a chain and pull that all the way through to finish that off. This middle one I think is pretty secure in there. My dress, not one of the middle tails came out, so I'm happy with that. And then to hide my tails, to be honest, I looped these through and then I got a needle and thread, and oops, I actually sewed my knots and my tails in the best I could. I did not do this as I went. I did it all at the very end, and I would not recommend doing that at all. It was the worst because by then you're just kind of over it, you know what I mean? So highly recommend doing this as you go. I try to get it to the corner because that's where all those double crochets are bunched in and it secures it nicely. Alright, I'm making a mess. I'm just gonna trim it right there and call it a day. Okay, so there is the granny square center complete. Now we are going to work on the border that we use to join these. I'll do the black border on this one, and then I will join them together with the white border on the black. So to add my next color, I stick my hook in and then I loop it through. I make a little loop through the front, and you can see I have my tail and then my working yarn there, and I'm going to chain it with all those pieces of yarn together, and I'm going to drop the tail and I'm going to chain another 2. So now I have my first little section, and I'm going to work on this just like I worked on the other rows, doing my 3 double crochets and only chaining in the corners. So you can see I just went right into that side gap there. I hope you can see a side gap, and then once I get to the corner I will chain 2 and then work on my sides just like I've been saying. So I'm going to finish this border, and the first one you do to start, you're going to complete the whole border all the way around. The next ones you'll start all the borders that aren't going to be attached to another granny square. You can go in whichever order you want. You can even join it first and then finish your border after, or you can start your border first and then have your last side of your square be the joining side. I hope that makes sense. There is my granny square with my border done. So to do the next one, I am going to go with my black granny square that you probably can't see very well, and I'm going to work with my white. You know what? I think I'm going to move to my other desk so that you can see this better, because the black just is not showing up very well. Okay, make sure this is right side up. Alright, and I am going to start, I'll do one side of my border and then I will join it, and then I will finish my border after that. So I'm just going to start like I did the other one, but I'm only working on this side. I'm not doing the corner yet. Okay, so I'm nearing my corner. I am going to start connecting it to this corner here. I finished my last of the double crochets for this side, so I got to work on my corner area. I'm going to chain one. I'm going to dip it into this corner gap. I'm going to loop my yarn. I'm going to pull it through, and I'm going to finish my chain, and then I'm going to chain one. So I chained one, I put it in that gap, I finished my chain, and then I did another chain to lock it, and then I'm going to finish my corner into that original granny square by doing my 3 double crochets. And now I'm working on the sides. So every now and then I'll just line them up to make sure I'm getting the same gap across, if that makes, I'm just making sure things are lined up is what I'm trying to say. So I finished my double crochet. I'm going to lock that in with the chain. I'm going to dip it into that gap, my hook. I'm going to finish that chain stitch. I'm going to do another chain to lock that in, and then I'm going to do my double crochets into the original granny square side gap. And then again, I'm going to lock it with the chain stitch, find my gap on the other side, stick my hook in, pull my yarn through, pull it through that loop, and then I'm going to chain one, and I'm going to do my 3 double crochets into my side gap here. Lock it, dip it, hook it, pull it through, lock it, double crochet. And I'm going to just quickly make sure everything's all lined up, and you can see it's lining up nicely. And then I'm just going to turn it, and I'm going to finish my border just like normal. Okay, so I will show you what it's like when you have a corner with 3 different granny squares, or a granny triangle. I still need to show you guys how to do the granny triangles, because that is pretty important around the armhole and around the slits of the skirt. So I'm going to finish that, and I will be right back. Okay, so you can see, this was what I was trying to explain before. You can do your border before you join. You can do your joining first and then finish your border. It really doesn't matter, just how you want to jump into it. So let's start our granny triangle. I'm starting it the same way I started my granny square, with my weird knot. There's that. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, slip stitch, hold that open, chain 3, and we're going to start out, oh, wait a second. So here we go. Here's where things get different. You have to add some extra gaps, and you don't necessarily do that automatically with your pattern. You kind of have to do it manually. And by manually, I mean, just watch me. This one's going to be hard for me to explain. Okay, so I started out the same, where I chained 3. I'm going to add another chain to my side. This is going to be the bottom of my triangle, the very long part of my triangle, if that makes sense. And by adding that extra chain, I added a space to have that gap. So now I'm going to work on my side. So I'm going to do my 3 double crochets, and then I'm going to go into my corner. Is this okay? Making sure I'm in frame. Okay, so then I'm going to chain 2 for my corner, do 3 double crochets. Yes, I think. Yeah. Yes, okay. I'm remembering. It's been a while since I've done this. So, a little recap, because I'm probably making this a lot more confusing than it needs to be. I did my loop the same way as we did the granny square. I chained 4, that way I can add a gap right here. And then I did my side, my 3 double crochets. I chained 2 for my corner, did another side, 3 double crochets, and now I got to add another gap for this side. So I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to do another double crochet to finish off this row. So then we're going to start our second row. We're going to flip it, and we have to add another gap. So chain 3, add another 1 for that gap, and then we're gonna go into our gap right here, just like we did our granny squares. Double crochet 3 times, and then just like our other sides, because this is a side, this is our corner, so just like our other sides, we're going to go directly into that other gap, our corner gap. No chain stitching just yet. Finish those 3 double crochets, and now we're at the corner, so we do chain 2, and then we finish this side, or this corner. You know what I mean. And then directly into that last gap on this row. And after this, we're going to add our other half gap. I'll call these my half gaps. So we did that. We're going to add our half gap, chain 1, and double crochet right into that gap again. Just 1 double crochet. Flip it over, and we're going to work on our next row. Chain 4, and then we'll put our 3 double crochets in that half gap. So this one, you just got to make sure at the start and finish of every row that you add that half gap. And that's pretty much all you need to know for the granny triangles. I did, at least that's how I figured it out. So I'm gonna finish this. I hope that wasn't confusing. I'm gonna finish this up, and then I will show you how I joined this, and then I will also show you how I finished the granny triangles, because especially along the skirt it was a little funky. So yeah, I will be right back when I am done with this triangle. But yeah, just make sure to add your extra little half gap at the start and finish of the rows. And these obviously don't go all the way around. You're just kind of building that triangle and going back and forth. Okay, so here's a closer look, just in case you could not see what I was doing. I did my half gap, as I started calling it right here, which was the 4 chain stitches, and then my side, the 3 double crochets, did my corner, 2 chain stitches, side, and then my other half gap, which was a chain stitch and then a single crochet. And then I flipped it, and I did the same thing where I added the 4, did my side, corner, side, and then I did a chain stitch and a double crochet there, and I did that for every row. Even the last one, you have to make sure to add that additional half gap, because when you are joining them and adding your border, it's going to be important that you have that there so everything lines up. So we're going to be adding that one here. As you can see, we're going to be joining it together on 2 sides, and we have this corner here. Okay, so this is where it's different. I got that, and I'm starting it just as I was the other ones. Chain 2. And then right here, I'm going to dip it into that corner there, grab my yarn, pull it through just like the other ones, and pull it through there. And then I'm going to continue that little chunk of 3 right there. Oh, what's going on? Okay, so that is how I start that side. I attached the yarn to the triangle, I chained the 3, I dipped it into that corner gap there, locked it in, and then I finished it just onto the triangle. So then I'm just going to continue this like I was doing the granny squares. Lock it, dip it, pull it. What in the world just happened there? Dip it, pull it, lock it in, another chain stitch, and then back to this gap here. Okay, so I'm starting on my corner, and I'm going to start the first side of that corner with my 3 double crochets. And again, I'm going to lock it with the chain stitch. I'm going to dip it into the other white border at a diagonal, hook my yarn, pull it through, lock it again, and then again into the corner of that granny square. And that's it. You just have to make sure you're getting all the gaps, lining everything up, and you're good to go. So once I get this done, I will just show you how I did the finishing border on that granny triangle, because it does get a little bit messy with the weird loops and stuff like that. All right, now we are going to work on this border here. So if you can tell, the loops, especially of the double crochet, they're a lot wider. It's not nice like the loops of our granny squares. It's just the chain stitch. Those are easy to do a single crochet on, and you have a nice guide there. This, it's a little bit more messy, so I just kind of went into all the loops as many times as I felt would. I'm going to do this pretty sloppily just because this is just to give you guys an example. But some of the loops, the bigger loops, I went in a few times. So like for example, here's this one. I hope you can see, but this is a bigger loop here, so I'm going to go in just until all of my, I did single crochets for my border, fill it up so that looks pretty full, so I can move on to the next. I just find whatever loop looks and feels good, and we'll get a nice clean border. And my dress, I'm not gonna lie, I started getting kind of lazy at this point, so it's a little sparse in some areas, but it looks better than nothing. Oh, that loop was a little loosey-goosey. So when that happens, I'll just go into the loop underneath it. And that, I'm catching on to a bunch of different loops here. Let's try this again. So I'm just gonna go underneath and go under two. Well, that one's just one. Now I'm just dipping into to whatever I can. But this is what I did. No rhyme or reason. I just went for it and tried to make it look nice. So there you can see, I hope, kind of how I did my border. Hopefully that was in focus. We'll find out. And there you have it. Excuse the noise. I am a mom and I have 2 small boys, but all the elements you need to make this granny square dress. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments below and I will do my best to answer them. And if you like content like this, make sure to subscribe. I'm going to be uploading lots of sewing and crochet and crafting videos. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. Bye.